Hello, my name is Sophie Holloway, and 3 hours after I came back from my father's hospital bedside, I found my mother locked in a basement like a forgotten suitcase. 14 days. No food. No water. And the one person who was supposed to protect her, my sister. So if you think this is just another family drama, think again. I knew something was off the second my foot hit the porch. The air felt stale, like the house had stopped breathing while I was gone. The porch light flickered above me, struggling to stay alive, and the metal of the front doorknob shocked cold against my palm. It shouldn't have been that cold. Not in October. Not in this house. My key slipped once before sliding into the lock. 2 weeks away shouldn't make home feel foreign, but the second the door opened, I smelled it: mildew, dust, and something that reminded me of forgotten laundry. It stopped me mid-step. This wasn't just quiet. This was a silence scrubbed clean of life. My heartbeat thudded louder than my footsteps as I walked inside. Every sound bounced back at me when I set my bag down. The thump echoed through the hallway as if the walls resented the interruption. I touched the console table and felt grit under my fingers. Dust. Thin, even untouched. Vera was supposed to be here. She promised she'd watch over Mom. She'd said it like someone doing me a favor, like I didn't already carry the weight of too much guilt for leaving in the first place. My eyes drifted to the family photos on the wall, my mother's smile captured through decades, my father in better years, the two of us as girls. Except the order was wrong. A couple of frames had been moved. Not taken down, just shifted, almost casually, like someone rearranging furniture in a house they didn't love anymore. Something creaked behind the kitchen. I froze. There it was again, a faint, uneven rhythm. A soft knock, no, not a knock. A thud, a dragging thud. Then silence. My breath lodged in my throat. The sound returned, 2 beats this time. Then a pause. Then another. Not pipes. Not the house settling. A person. I walked through the kitchen on instinct, my steps unsteady. Mom. My voice cracked, swallowed instantly by the dark. Nothing. The noise rose again, muffled and desperate. It came from below. My stomach tightened as I turned toward the basement door. I hadn't touched that door since before I left for Aurora. I hadn't needed to. Mom rarely went downstairs anymore. But the door looked wrong. A heavy steel padlock clamped across the latch. Industrial. New. Not ours. For a second, all I could do was stare. My throat burned with disbelief. This wasn't neglect. This was intention. I stumbled back, reaching for something. Anything to break it open. My body was moving before my mind caught up. I ran to the garage, grabbed the crowbar hanging from the hook. It slipped once in my sweaty grip. I wedged it under the lock. My arms felt weak, but fear pushes harder than muscle ever could. One slam. Metal groaned. Second slam. The wood splintered. Third. The lock snapped open and clattered to the floor. The smell hit me first, stale air soaked in something sour, something human. My eyes adjusted to the darkness below. At the bottom of the stairs, curled tightly on the concrete, like she was bracing for winter, was my mother, Celia, my mother. Her nightgown clung to her body, the fabric stiff with sweat and dirt. Her lips were cracked white. Her hair stuck to her face. For a moment, her eyes didn't recognize me. They darted wild, confused, terrified. Then she saw me, and the terror melted. Her face crumpled into something I hadn't seen in years. Raw need. Love stripped bare. She reached for me with a trembling hand that looked too small, too fragile to belong to the woman who used to carry me on her hip. I fell to my knees before I even felt my legs move. Mom, oh God, Mom, I'm here. My voice broke open. I touched her cheek and felt the heat of fever, the dryness of skin left too long without water. She didn't say my name. She tried to, but the sound cracked in her throat. She pressed her face into my shoulder like she recognized safety, even if she couldn't form the word. Her body was here, but part of her had already left the house. I gathered her in my arms. She felt like a bundle of bones wrapped in a memory, and carried her up the stairs. Every step felt heavier, not because of the weight, but because I could feel the imprint of every hour she had spent in that darkness. My fingers fumbled as I dialed 911. I could barely breathe long enough to explain. I kept looking at her face, afraid she'd drift away if I blinked. By the time the ambulance pulled up, red lights splashing across the street, neighbors were stepping outside. Whispers floated through the air like smoke. I didn't hear them clearly. I only caught pieces. Is that her mother? Was she down there? I thought Vera was home. Vera's car screeched into the driveway moments later. She stepped out dressed for dinner. Hair curled, lipstick perfect. Not a wrinkle in her blouse. Not a hint of shame. What happened? She gasped, walking toward us with rehearsed shock. Sophie, what on earth? How did she get down there? Her perfume hit me before her words did. Sweet. Synthetic. Wrong. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My voice was buried under the pounding of my heartbeat. All I did was take Mom's hand, hold it tight, and hope she could feel me through the haze. Vera hovered too close, repeating questions no one needed answers to. The paramedics worked around her with practiced patience. Through the blur of voices and lights and sirens, Mom squeezed my hand, weak but deliberate. She looked at me with eyes glazed from days without light, and still she knew me. She didn't forget me. That's what scared them the most. The ambulance pulled away, and I stood there, clutching the blanket they'd used to cover Mom. It still held her body heat, or maybe I was imagining it. Either way, it was more real than the sirens fading into the night. I drove myself to the hospital. Vera followed in her car, headlights trailing me like suspicion I hadn't earned. Inside, everything smelled like bleach and second chances. Fluorescent lights hummed. My shoes squeaked across the polished floor. I told the nurse our last name. She nodded like she'd heard it before, but without kindness. Mom was behind double doors, surrounded by machines, and murmurs I wasn't allowed to hear. A curtain of authority dropped between us, and I stood outside it, helpless again. I hadn't realized Vera was already speaking to the officer until I caught her voice slicing through the air like a butter knife dressed in velvet. She has early onset dementia, Vera said, her tone matter of fact. I think she may have wandered. I stepped out for groceries and came back to find the basement door ajar. I stepped closer, still wearing the clothes that smelled like mold and fear. My hands were stained with the filth from that floor. And Vera, her lipstick hadn't smudged. The officer turned toward me. And you are. I opened my mouth, but the silence wedged itself between my teeth. Vera smiled at him, then looked at me. This is my sister. She's been in Aurora with our father. He had a stroke. Poor thing's been stretched thin. The way she said it made me feel small, like I was an unreliable witness to my own life. She wasn't here, Vera added casually. I've been taking care of Mom the whole time. I should have said something. I should have shouted, but all I could do was look at my hands and think about how much dirt it took to cover a person. Looking back now, I should have seen it coming. I didn't know what was waiting for me next. I sat in the hallway across from the vending machines. The hum of the coffee machine was louder than the voices. That's how it always worked. Background noise swallowing the important parts. I thought about Mom's hands, how they used to fix my hair in the mornings, how she threaded my friendship bracelets in middle school because I didn't have the patience to pull the knots tight enough, how they trembled in the dark now. Vera had always been better at talking, at sounding right, at saying the first word so no one remembered the second. I didn't know how long I'd been staring at the coffee machine when my phone buzzed. Sophie. I looked up. Edith. From across the street. She must have followed the ambulance or maybe just wandered by fate. Her voice was quieter than usual. I've heard things. Nights. A voice. I thought it was my old pipes. She held her purse close to her chest, like it might leak the truth if she let go. But now it makes sense. You're not crazy, sweetheart. No one had said I was. But no one had said I wasn't either. That's where it all started. The officer came back, notepad in hand. Miss Holloway, would you mind giving a statement? I nodded, lips pressed together. But before I could speak, Vera leaned in. Officer, my sister's been under a lot of stress. She's been away for 2 weeks. She might not have the full picture. The words hung in the air, like a smoke alarm just out of reach. The officer scribbled something down. I watched the pen scratch across the paper, like it was rewriting history. I opened my mouth. My throat closed. I had no proof, just stains, just fear. I didn't realize it then, but that moment changed everything. I walked back to my car, hands trembling around the keys. I leaned my forehead against the steering wheel and tried to breathe. She was alive. I typed the words to Dad, then deleted them. Instead, I wrote, I'm home, because somehow that felt less like a lie. The worst part wasn't that they didn't believe me. It's that they didn't even need to. The message I sent to Dad still glowed faintly on my screen as I pulled into Vera's driveway. The words looked too thin to hold the weight of the night, but I didn't have anything stronger left in me. I sat there for a moment, watching the house in front of me, waiting for something, the porch light to flicker, a curtain to move, a sign that the life I thought existed here was still breathing. Nothing shifted. The house looked polished, perfect, staged, like Vera had tried to scrub away, not just dust, but guilt. I stepped out of the car, the cool air biting at my skin. My fingers found the loose garden stone near the steps, the one Mom always hid the spare key under. She used to say, in case you ever need to come home quickly. I held the key for a breath, letting the memory settle in my chest before sliding it into the lock. The door opened without resistance. Too easily. Too quietly. Inside, the house looked curated. Every pillow fluffed. Every candle unburned. Every counter wiped clean. It wasn't a home. It was a showroom where emotions had been evicted. I moved through the living room. My footsteps soft on the wood. I knew where I needed to go before my mind formed the thought. The study, the kitchen counter, the place Vera always dropped her things, confident in her own routine. When I saw the laptop sitting there, screen still faintly lit from sleep mode, my breath caught. I expected a password prompt. I expected resistance. Something. But the screen woke with a gentle blink. No password. No barrier. As if she believed no one would ever look. Or maybe she believed I never would. Looking back now, I should have seen it coming. I didn't know what was waiting for me next. The desktop was painfully organized. Folders labeled by month. Financial documents. Travel itineraries. Work presentations. And one folder tucked between them. POA_mom_final. I clicked. There it was. My mother's name in handwriting that didn't look like hers anymore. Legal jargon printed across the page like a net thrown over her life. And Vera's signature beside it. Perfect, steady, sure. My eyes traced the date. The same day Vera stopped answering my calls. The day she sent me a single text saying Mom was resting a lot lately. A tightness pulled across my ribs. It didn't feel like breathing anymore. It felt like bracing for impact. Document after document told the same story. Changes to accounts, new authorizations, digital transfers. Notes she left herself. Move before Sophie returns. Call notary again. Schedule Dr. Monroe. I scrolled until the glow of the screen felt like it was burning into my eyes. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from a kind of clarity that felt sharp enough to cut. I downloaded everything, saved backups, emailed copies to myself. My body moved with a steadiness I didn't recognize. It felt like stepping into someone stronger than I had been an hour ago. That's where it all started. I opened her synced calendar next. Color-coded blocks filled the screen. Meetings, brunches, spa appointments, dinners with friends. A whirlwind of social life. All during the week, Mom disappeared into that basement. Not a single note about checking on her. Not one reminder to pick up prescriptions. Nothing that resembled caregiving. Instead, the days were padded with things like hair appointment, 2 p.m., wine night, 7 p.m., Derek dinner, don't be late. The kind of entries you make when you're too busy enjoying life to notice someone else losing theirs. I didn't realize it then, but that moment changed everything. A voicemail icon blinked at the top right corner of the screen. I clicked play. Hey, don't worry about Mom. She's been sleeping a lot, but seems fine. Enjoy the time with Dad. Okay. Her voice sounded casual, warm, even. The timestamp hit me in the chest. It was the same afternoon Mom was likely locked inside that room. I played it again. Then again. My jaw tightened each time the lie wrapped itself in that pleasant tone she always used when she wanted to seem helpful. I forwarded it to Delphine. No explanation. Just the audio. The truth didn't need commentary. That's where it all started. My reflection blurred on the laptop screen as another memory rose. Uninvited but sharp. I was 15, standing in our old hallway, hearing Mom call out weakly from the bathroom after she'd slipped. I ran toward her, heart pounding. Vera stood beside me, calm as always. Don't call 911 yet, she'd said. What if it's nothing? Mom had a fractured wrist. Vera said she was overreacting. She always talked like that, as if hesitation made her wiser, as if silence granted her power. The memory dissolved, leaving a tight ache behind. I wasn't 15 anymore, and she wasn't going to tell me to wait this time. I opened a new email to Delphine, attached every file. My cursor blinked in the empty message box, waiting for words I didn't have. I typed nothing. I just hit send. The whoosh of the email leaving felt louder than it should have been. Final. Irreversible. She thought she locked the basement. I whispered into the stillness. But she forgot to lock her arrogance. The house remained quiet, not peaceful, just exposed. The evidence didn't shout. It just waited for someone who knew where to look. Sleep didn't come, not even for a moment. I lay on the couch in Vera's living room, my clothes still carrying the scent of the basement, my thoughts circling the glow of the laptop screen long after it dimmed. Morning pushed through the blinds before I realized I hadn't moved. I couldn't. My body had gone still, the way a person freezes when they finally learn the shape of the monster they've been living with. When I finally stood, my knees shook, not from fear this time, but from the weight of what I knew I had to do next. The house felt colder in daylight, like truth had drained the warmth from the walls. I walked down the hallway toward the one room I hadn't opened yet, Mom's old bedroom. The knob turned without resistance. The moment the door cracked, something inside me recoiled. The room was stripped bare. The pale pink walls that once held her floral frames had been painted over in a flat beige, the kind rental owners use when they don't care who lives there next. The bed was gone. Her dresser was gone. The little rug she used to keep by the window was gone. Erased, just like her. I stepped inside, breathing slow, feeling each inhale scrape the back of my throat. My hand brushed the closet door, and when I tugged it open, the emptiness felt like a slap. Only 3 things hung there: a faded cardigan she used to wear at Christmas, a thin scarf that still smelled faintly of her perfume, and a pillowcase sagging from the shelf. Something was tucked inside. I pulled it down and reached in. Insurance papers, old ones, policies she never would have handed to Vera willingly. They looked like they'd been stuffed away in a hurry, as if Mom tried to hide them before someone else could reach them. I didn't realize it then, but that moment changed everything. On the dresser, a single sheet of paper caught my eye. The title froze my breath. Property transfer, Celia Holloway to Vera Holloway. The date punched through me like a blunt instrument. Week 2, the days when all my calls went to voicemail. Her signature barely legible, trembling across the page like it had been dragged from her. A quiet fury rose in my stomach, slow, steady, with edges sharp enough to anchor me. I took out my phone and snapped photos from every angle. My camera roll, once filled with sunsets and recipe screenshots, now held evidence. My phone buzzed. Delphine. I answered before the first ring faded. "Did you find anything?" she asked. Her voice was always calm, but today it had a weight to it. "Yes," I whispered. "And it's bad." "Describe it." I told her about the documents, the dates, the signature that barely looked alive. She inhaled softly. "The POA is likely invalid. It wasn't notarized properly, and a property transfer under cognitive decline is challengeable." I asked the only question that mattered. "Can we prove her decline at the time?" Silence stretched. Then Delphine said, "If we can get medical records or testimony." Yes, we can fight this. Testimony. My mind flicked to Mom. Her voice so faint. Her eyes filled with days she couldn't name. But she still reached for me. Maybe, I said. I didn't know what was waiting for me next. The mirror over the dresser still hung there, cracked at the corner. I caught my reflection in it, a woman I barely recognized. Tired eyes, hair tangled from the night, shoulders lifted as if waiting for the next blow. A memory surged forward. I was 8, sitting on the carpet while Mom brushed my hair before school. My legs were crossed, my shoes tapping softly against each other. Vera was in the doorway, arms crossed, insisting I'd be late if we didn't hurry. Mom kept brushing. Slow, gentle strokes. Then she leaned close and said something I didn't understand until now. If you ever have to choose between being liked and being kind, choose kindness. But don't ever let anyone confuse that with silence. I remembered nodding because it felt like a secret grown-ups shared only with kids they trusted. Today, her words felt less like advice and more like instruction. That's where it all started. I opened the nightstand drawer. Only one thing lay inside, a folded sheet from a private physician. The letter had read, Felix Monroe, MD. I didn't recognize the name. The document claimed Mom had diminished capacity, written in a tone that sounded detached and absolute. There was no mention of medical history, no testing notes, no neurological assessment. Just one signature at the bottom. I could almost hear Vera's voice while I read it. This is for your own good, Mom. Or maybe you're making this harder than it needs to be. She'd always use those lines, not to comfort, but to corner. Before I could sink too deep into that thought, my phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. I overheard your sister discussing moving your mom to another state. She said you wouldn't fight across state lines. Yvette, RN. My fingers tightened around the phone until my knuckles hurt. This wasn't mismanagement. This wasn't stress. This wasn't burnout. This was strategy. A plan to isolate Mom. Remove her. Make sure whatever remained of her wouldn't be found by anyone who cared enough to look. Looking back now, I should have seen it coming. I didn't realize it then, but that moment changed everything. I read the text again, then again. My breath felt too shallow to be useful. My pulse thudded in my ears like a warning drum. I set the phone down and whispered into the hollow room. They weren't waiting for Mom to forget. They were counting on it. The silence of that stripped room stayed with me long after I walked out of it, clinging to my skin like dust. By the time I reached the parking lot of the assisted living facility, the sun had shifted low enough to cast long, bending shadows across the pavement. They looked like arms reaching for something they couldn't hold. I felt the same. I stepped out of my car and leaned against the door, letting the engine tick itself quiet while my heartbeat tried to find a steady rhythm. Vera's SUV was parked crookedly near the front entrance, as if she'd arrived in a hurry or left in one. I waited. My hands rested on the photos I had printed from my phone, the forged transfer, Mom's jagged signature, the date that told the truth better than any witness ever could. I didn't plan what I'd say. I just watched the glass doors slide open, watched Vera step outside with her purse tucked neatly under her arm, watched her smooth her hair even though no wind touched her. She looked like someone stepping out of a conference room, not a sister walking out of a facility where our mother was recovering from being locked in a basement. When her eyes met mine, she faltered, just slightly, just enough. I pushed off the car and walked toward her, stopping in her path. "We need to talk," I said. My voice felt steadier than I expected. She tightened her jaw. "Not here, Sophie. Right here." I lifted the photos between us. "You made Mom sign this while she was barely coherent." She glanced at the paper, shrugged lightly. She didn't object. Something in me cracked, not loudly, not visibly, but with a depth that shifted the ground under my feet. She cried for me in the dark. I whispered. Vera's expression didn't change. Her eyes flicked toward the parking lot like she was checking if anyone was watching. She cries over reruns of Jeopardy. You know how she is. Looking back now, I should have seen it coming. I didn't know what was waiting for me next. I stepped closer. "Don't do that. Don't pretend. This is normal." She lifted her chin. "I did what I had to do. You weren't here." Again. There it was. The old wound she loved to open. Blame wrapped in civility. I'd grown up inside that tone, always wondering why truth sounded so small next to her confidence. I held up the documents. "You think calling it care makes it real?" Her eyes hardened. "You are making this dramatic. Mom needed decisions made. I made them." "You made them without her," I said, "and without me." Vera let out a small laugh, sharp, practiced. "Oh, please. You've always been better at caring in theory. I'm the one who stayed." Something in the way she said stayed felt crueler than anything else she could have said. Like staying had been a burden she deserved a medal for. That was the last moment I saw her as my sister. That's where it all started. As Vera stepped around me to leave, a hand landed on my arm. I turned to see Yvette, the nurse who had helped when Mom was first admitted. Her face was pale, eyes darting toward Vera's retreating figure. "You need to act fast," she murmured. I overheard her on the phone earlier. My stomach tightened. "What did she say?" "She's planning to move your mother by the end of the week. Out of state." Yvette swallowed. "She said you wouldn't have time to stop it." The words felt like a hand closing around my throat. Not choking, just steady enough to remind me how fragile everything was. I didn't realize it then, but that moment changed everything. I breathed out slowly. "Thank you." She squeezed my arm once before walking back inside. I found Mom in her room, sitting by the window, her gaze fixed on something I couldn't see. The light outside softened her edges, made her look like a photograph left out in the sun too long. I sat beside her. "Mom." Her eyes moved toward me, but didn't settle. Not at first. Then, suddenly, they sharpened just enough. She reached forward, her hand trembling as it closed around my wrist with surprising strength. "Don't let them take me," she whispered. My heart thudded against my ribs. Her voice was faint, but firm in a way that felt like the last piece of truth she still owned. "I won't," I said softly. "I promise." She held my wrist for a few seconds more, then her grip loosened. She drifted again, staring out the window as if nothing had passed between us. But I felt it, a thread tied tightly around both of us. That's where it all started. I stepped back into the parking lot. The sky had turned the color of bruised lavender. My phone buzzed in my hand. Another message from Vera? A warning? A lie? Instead, I open a new message. To Vera, "You move her, I press charges. Next time, I won't be standing in the parking lot. I hit send. The message showed read. No reply. A different kind of silence this time. A silence that revealed more than words ever could. I dialed Delphine. She answered on the second ring. Talk to me. I'm done waiting. I said, file the first motion. Her voice didn't soften because she knew I didn't need comfort. I needed action. I'll start the paperwork tonight. I closed my eyes. The weight of the day pressed down on me, but for the first time, it didn't crush. It anchored. That was the last olive branch I ever offered her. The message to Delphine had barely disappeared from my screen when the tremor in my hands finally stopped. But it wasn't calm that followed. It was the weight that comes after a decision you can't undo. I stayed in the car, watching the sky slip into that bruised color between afternoon and night, hoping silence might help me breathe. It didn't. When I walked into the house, the stillness was unsettling, too quiet to comfort, too hollow to feel like home. I set my phone on the counter and made tea, but I couldn't taste it. My body moved out of habit, not want. The steam curled up gently, but I was too far gone to notice. Then the phone buzzed. Once. Then again. Then again. I ignored it at first. I thought it was Delphine. Or maybe Yvette. Maybe even Dad, someone who understood the weight of what happened. But it wasn't any of them. It was a mutual friend. Then another. And another. I unlocked my phone. Vera's face stared back from a tagged photo. A party. Cake. Balloons. A navy dress. Champagne. The caption. Finally free to live my life again. Blessed. The photo had been taken the same day Mom was found in the basement. My stomach turned. Then came another message. This one from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. A screenshot from a private family Facebook group. A post about supporting caregivers. Someone wrote, "It's sad when unstable people try to tear families apart. Some sisters just want attention." No names. But everyone knew who they meant. The comments poured in. She needs help. Poor Vera, she does everything. Some people don't appreciate what they have. No one mentioned the basement. No one asked what happened to Mom. No one asked what it cost me to speak. I didn't reply. I just saved the screenshots. Every one of them. Tiny betrayals, carefully filed away. That was the beginning. I stepped outside. The walls felt too tight. I sat in my car under the dark sky, the cold seeping in. Night does something to memory. It makes it louder. I remembered being 14 at Grandpa's funeral. The pastor asked for family memories. I stepped forward, ready to talk about the summer mornings he taught me to fish. But Vera got there first. She spoke for 20 minutes. She used my stories. I never opened my mouth. People praised her for being so composed. Even then, she knew how to turn silence into praise and guilt. I didn't know it then, but that moment shaped everything. The next morning, I went to see Mom. I needed something to hold on to, something real. The room smelled like lavender and old paper. She was awake, her hands clutched around something under the blanket. I thought it was a tissue, but then I saw the metal glint. My necklace. The one she gave me when I turned 10, silver, small, with Sophie etched into the back. She held it like it was life itself. Her eyes found my face, cloudy but steady. She forgot my birthday. I whispered, but she remembered this. I kissed her forehead. Her skin felt like a page worn thin from too many winters. That was the moment everything changed. When I walked out into the cold morning, I didn't feel lost anymore. Vera wanted silence. She wanted me to doubt, wanted others to dismiss me. But Mom holding that necklace, that was truth. She hadn't forgotten me. Even when her mind faded, her heart knew. I opened my phone. I took a photo of her hand holding the necklace. I posted it. No explanation. Just one line. Silence isn't peace. It's what abusers count on. It spread fast. Shares. Comments. Messages from strangers, old friends, neighbors. I've been there. Thank you for this. This broke my heart. Some defended Vera. Families argue. We don't know the full story. But I didn't need everyone to believe me. I just needed the truth to breathe. She went public first, but I went real. The morning after my post gained traction felt unreal. Not lighter, not victorious, just different. Like the air had shifted, and I was finally breathing in a truth I'd been holding back for years. I made myself coffee, though I barely tasted anything. My hands wrapped around the warm mug because I needed something to hold on to. My phone buzzed before I took the first sip. A new email. No subject. From an unfamiliar law firm. I clicked it open, and the words hit me with the kind of cold precision only corporate language can deliver. Our client, Ms. Vera Holloway, demands that you immediately cease and desist from sharing defamatory statements. The rest blurred for a moment. Defamation, emotional distress, attempting to destroy her reputation. I sat back in my chair, letting the absurdity settle into something sharper. She didn't call. She didn't ask. She didn't even pretend to care why I'd posted what I did. She went straight for legal intimidation, her favorite armor. Looking back now, I should have seen it coming. I didn't know what was waiting for me next. I forwarded the message to Delphine with trembling fingers. She called within minutes. She's panicking, Delphine said. This is a scare tactic. Nothing more. She thinks she can shut me up. I whispered. Oh, Sophie. She thinks she already has. Delphine exhaled softly. But this means the truth rattled her. Keep everything she sends you. That's where it all started. 2 hours later, another message came in, this time a phone call from an unfamiliar number. Is this Sophie Holloway? The woman asked. Yes. My name is Sandra. I'm a journalist with Elder Watch Colorado. My breath caught. How did you get my number? Your post is being shared in advocacy groups. We've actually received 2 similar complaints about your sister from unrelated parties. Her voice softened. Would you be willing to go on record? Something inside me wavered. My instinct was to hide, to keep quiet until things settled. But then I remembered the basement, the way Mom's body felt in my arms, how she whispered not to let them take her. Yes, I said, I will. Good, she replied, because stories like yours change laws. I didn't realize it then, but that moment changed everything. By afternoon, a small write-up appeared on a watchdog website. Nothing sensational, just a factual note about ongoing concerns in a local family. It didn't name us directly, but it didn't have to. People connected the dots faster than I expected. Screenshots circulated. Forum lit up. Conversations sparked in corners of the internet I'd never visited. And then Vera deleted all her social accounts. Her carefully curated image vanished overnight. When people erase themselves, it's almost always because they fear what the truth might expose. I drove to the assisted living facility, needing to ground myself again. Mom's room was dim when I walked in. She didn't look toward me, didn't blink in recognition. Her gaze wandered somewhere far away, maybe to the edges of memory she could still hold. I sat beside her bed, my hands folded in my lap like a child saying a prayer. "Mom," I whispered. "It's me." No response. For a moment, the weight of everything hit me, so heavy it stole my breath. I was fighting for someone who might never remember the battle, someone who might not remember me. I touched her hand gently. "I'm here," I said. "I'm still here." Her eyelids fluttered. Her fingers curled slightly. And then, slowly, she turned her head. Her gaze locked onto mine with surprising clarity. "Did you tell the truth?" she asked. My chest tightened. "Yes, Mom, I did." She nodded once. Small, fragile, but certain. Even if she forgot tomorrow, she remembered now. That's where it all started. The next day, Delphine called. "It's time," she said. "Time for what?" "For consequences." Her voice carried no hesitation. She'd filed the lawsuit: fraud, elder abuse, unlawful confinement, financial exploitation. It wasn't an accusation anymore. It was official, legal, real. Vera was served at work an hour later. I didn't see it myself, but someone sent me the video from the lobby of her office. In it, Vera snatched the papers, scanned the first page, and her face twisted in a way I had never seen, anger mixing with fear, with humiliation, with something that looked strangely like disbelief. She raised her voice, yelled at the server delivering the documents. "You can't do this to me. This is slander. This is a misunderstanding." Her image, so polished, so controlled, cracked in public. People watched, recorded, shared. I didn't smile. Not exactly, but something in me exhaled for the first time in weeks. I didn't realize it then, but that moment changed everything. By nightfall, my phone buzzed with more messages than I could count. Some supportive, some curious, some cruel. But the only one I cared about was from Delphine. "Stage 1 complete." She wrote, "Rest tonight. You'll need your strength." Strength. It felt foreign, but maybe it was growing inside me, piece by piece. I stepped outside onto my porch, letting the cool air wash over me. The sky above was wide and calm, the kind that holds no judgment. I stood there until the chills settled in my bones. Vera thought she had my silence. She thought she had ownership of the story. But I had something she never planned on. I had nothing left to lose except the truth. And I wasn't giving that up. She thought she had my silence. I gave her consequences instead. The morning of the hearing arrived colder than I expected, as if the air itself had been holding its breath. I stepped out of my car with the folder pressed against my chest, the photo of Mom's bruised wrist tucked inside like a heartbeat I didn't want to lose. The courthouse loomed above me, gray stone, sharp lines, and windows that reflected nothing back. It felt less like a building and more like a test I'd been preparing for without knowing the rules. I walked up the steps, slowly, each movement deliberate. My hair was tied back, my face bare. I didn't want armor. I wanted truth, even if it shook inside me. Inside, the hallway buzzed with low conversation. A journalist from Elder Watch nodded at me softly. Two officers passed with paperwork tucked under their arms. And in the far corner, Vera stood beside a man in an expensive suit, her posture rigid, her expression tight. She didn't look at me, not even once. Looking back now, I should have seen it coming. I didn't know what was waiting for me next. Vera's attorney began the hearing with the confidence of someone used to rearranging the narrative in his favor. "This is a family misunderstanding," he said, his tone smooth. "A matter of miscommunication during a time of medical strain. Ms. Holloway," he motioned to Vera, "acted under immense pressure. Any decisions she made were out of concern, not intent to harm." Concern. The word stung harder than any accusation. When Delphine stood, the shift in the room was immediate. Her voice carried the kind of quiet authority that makes people listen without needing to be told. "This wasn't confusion," she said. "This was deliberate isolation, unauthorized financial transfer, and physical neglect. What happened to Ms. Celia Holloway was not an accident. It was planned, documented, and carried out with intent." I felt something inside me settle. A small, steady flame. Someone was speaking for Mom in a way she hadn't been able to speak for herself. That's where it all started. Then Delphine pressed a button on the remote. The room dimmed slightly as a muted police body cam video appeared on the screen. The basement, the bucket in the corner, the thin blanket, the padlocked door. Even though I had seen it in person, the image on the screen hit me with a fresh wave of grief. I heard air catch in someone's throat behind me. Vera shifted in her seat, her hands clenching and unclenching. For once, she couldn't speak first. She couldn't cover the silence with excuses. I didn't realize it then, but that moment changed everything. When I took the stand, my legs felt unsteady, but my voice surprised me. It didn't waver. Not when I described finding her. Not when I explained the smell, the darkness, how her fingers curled into my shirt like she was afraid I might disappear. I held the photo of her bruised wrist up for the judge to see. They didn't just lock a door. I said quietly, they locked out every memory that made her feel human. The courtroom didn't move. Even the air felt still. That's where it all started. Then the bailiff wheeled Mom into the room. Her head tilted slightly, her hands trembling. A blanket draped across her lap. For a second, I worried this was asking too much of her. She'd been drifting in and out of awareness for weeks. I wasn't sure she'd even know where she was. The judge hesitated. Is the witness lucid enough for testimony? Mom blinked, her gaze skimming the room. Her breath trembled, and her hands clutched the blanket tighter. And then she looked at me, not past me, not near me, but directly into my eyes. "That's my daughter," she whispered. Her voice was thin, frayed, barely there, but certain. Not her. She lifted a trembling hand and pointed directly at me. Not at Vera, at me. Her hand did not shake this time. My heart cracked in a way that didn't hurt. It opened. I didn't know what was waiting for me next. Vera stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "She's confused," she said, her voice breaking. "She doesn't know what she's saying. She hasn't been well. This isn't fair." Her attorney tugged on her sleeve, whispering urgently, but she wouldn't sit. She wouldn't stop. For the first time in her life, she was on the wrong side of a story she couldn't rewrite. The judge banged his gavel once, sharp enough to cut her off. This court finds reasonable cause to proceed with full charges, he said, including elder abuse, financial coercion, and unlawful confinement. Vera's face drained of color. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Not even she could spin this moment. The truth had spoken louder than her voice. They said she wouldn't remember, but she remembered enough to end it. 3 months later, the silence didn't feel hollow anymore. It felt earned. The sun filtered gently through the curtains of my one-bedroom apartment in Aurora, a smaller place than I ever imagined calling home, but the first one that belonged to no one's permission but mine. The walls were plain. The air was still, and nothing inside this space had ever been used against me. I reached for the envelope on the kitchen table. The court seal pressed into its corner still made my stomach turn, but I opened it anyway. Inside, the final reparations order. Confirmed. Legal. Final. And at the bottom, printed in neutral font. Funds currently unrecoverable. I folded the letter without flinching, because justice isn't a check. It's the absence of fear when you hear their name. That's where it all started. Vera never looked at me again. Not in court, not in appeals, not in apology. 6 years. No parole for 3. Her company let her go a week after the video of her screaming hit the news. Her husband filed for separation the same day, and when she requested supervised visitation with Mom, denied. Delphine left me a voicemail after the sentencing. We didn't bury her. We exposed her. And that's more permanent than prison. I didn't realize it then, but that moment changed everything. Mom and I live in chapters now. Most days she calls me the nice lady. Sometimes just sweetheart. She never asks why I'm always there. She just smiles when I help her into her shoes or rub lotion into her hands. Her voice has softened to a near whisper, and time is a fog she wanders in without direction. But I go, every week, without fail. I volunteer now at a local memory care center, helping people write letters they'll forget they sent, playing music from decades they only remember in fragments. I used to think the point was to bring them back, but it's not. It's to meet them where they are. One afternoon, while brushing crumbs off Mom's lap, she reached for my wrist. "You smell like my Sophie," she murmured. I froze, just long enough to remember what it was like to be seen. "I miss her," she added softly. I didn't correct her. I just held her hand. That's where it all started. A few weeks ago, my article was published in an elder care advocacy journal. I titled it simply, "The Basement Wasn't Just Physical." I told the truth. All of it. No names. No rage. Just reality. Since then, emails trickled in. From sons. From daughters. From strangers who wrote things like, "Your story gave me the courage to speak," or "I thought I was the only one." One line in particular stuck with me. My mother forgot my name too, but I remembered her fight. That's where it all started. Today, the air smells like spring, like lilacs and dirt, and the first promises of warmth. I push Mom's wheelchair along the lakeside path, near the community center. The water sparkles like it remembers what the sun feels like. The breeze lifts strands of her hair and carries them gently past her face. She's almost asleep. Her fingers twitch in her lap, like she's chasing something in a dream. Then quietly she says, "I'm safe now, right?" Her voice is barely a thread. I lean in, press my forehead against hers. Yes, Mama, I whisper. And so am I. She doesn't reply. But I don't need her to. I didn't win. I survived. And that's enough. She forgot my name again that night. But I never forgot why I fought for hers. Some people think survival is quiet, but in truth, it's the loudest thing you'll ever live through. If this story reminds you of someone, maybe even yourself, don't wait until the basement is locked. Speak, share, protect. What would you have done if it were your mother? I'd love to know in the comments. And if you believe more stories like this deserve to be told, make sure to subscribe, because the next one might be closer to home than you think.